Fellow Toastmasters, known Toastmaster, and welcome guests. On the 23rd of June, we are all going to have to answer one question. Should the United Kingdom remain in the European Union, or should it leave? And you will have to tick A, remain in the European Union, or B, leave the EU. We've just heard two speakers, one arguing in favour of remaining in the EU, and the other arguing in favour of leaving it. We are now going to open up to a general discussion. The idea being to help those of you that have not yet made up your minds to perhaps come to a decision, and those of you who already know your minds will potentially reinforce it. But the idea is that we will have a group discussion. We're going to run for about 20 minutes, and at the end of it we'll take another straw poll to see whether any minds have been made up or even influenced to change as a result of the discussion. I'd like you to think about the points that were made by the two speakers and consider whether there are any points that you would like to respond to, or if there are any issues that you feel they didn't raise but you think should be raised.
What do you mean, like immigration?
Just one moment, and I'm coming to that. Thank you very much. If I was about to say that if you would like to speak, would you please raise your hand to signal to me, and I will bring you into the discussion, and I will bring people in order that I see the hands go up. I'm going to try to make it an equitable discussion so that we cover reasonably well both sides of the debate. I would like to remind you that because we do only have 20 minutes, would you please keep your remarks short and to the point so that we can include as many opinions as possible and get as many people speaking as possible. Would you please also remember that this is a very emotive topic. Please be polite. You may disagree with the argument made by another speaker, and that is absolutely fine, but please do not insult the other speaker. So target the argument, not the person. I'm going to kick off by mentioning a point that was made by both of the speakers, and that's about security. Do you think we will be more secure if we remain in the EU or if we leave it? Do we have anyone here who has an opinion on that, please?
Yes.
Sure, Harry.
I'd like to actually reflect on one of the points made this evening by one of the speakers, suggesting that between people in the European community there was ease of, shall we say, extradition, whereas only last week we saw the case where a bomber living in Brussels could not be shifted to France without legal proceedings. How does that fit?
That's a very good point, and thank you very much. Would you like to?
No, I just think that's a very good point, actually. Yes, sorry, yeah.
Okay, you were just supporting Harry's point. Anyone else like to say something on that? Yes, sorry, I don't know your name, but please, gentlemen in suit. Melvin.
Today there was a subject in the news that saw that steelworks. I heard that we can't really subsidise the steelworks there because of EU regulations. So I was just wondering what people thought about that.
Yeah, okay, and you just want to raise that issue. Okay, that's a different issue from security.
Security of jobs.
Security of jobs, of course, it is, yes. Does anybody have a response then on the Port Talbot issue and job security?
Well, I do actually. In fact, we're being flooded with Chinese steel, which comes back to one of the points that was made earlier, that we're trading with China. Well, actually, they're ruining our trade at the moment. And the EU do want to put subsidies on the steel coming in from China, and they are actually doing that. And if they were allowed to flood the market, we would have no industry whatsoever. Certainly the steel industry wouldn't be coming out from the UK.
Okay, good point.
Yes.
Yes. Sheila, would you like to?
No, I'm just agreeing with you.
You're just agreeing. You're just agreeing.
Absolutely.
I think Julian's just agreeing. Do you
I
like
just
to
wondered
jump in?
whether that was anything to do with that's more to do with China, isn't it? I think rather than sort of being in Europe.
No. If we weren't part of Europe, we would have. I don't think we would have any chance of actually putting any kind of tariff on that steel. Whereas the EU have put tariffs on the Chinese steel already. They've done it. Now there's a huge area with all the countries in there. We can do that sort of thing. But as a tiny little island on our own, we find that that is quite. The States have done it.
So I think your point there is that we have more. It's just that we have more opportunity
If we're
as part
actually
of
part of
it.
it,
Yes.
rather
Yes.
than on our own. Yeah.
It's
So
a tiny
Yeah.
article.
Yeah.
Julie, would you like to? Do you want to really add to that?
I think it's it's very difficult, isn't it, really, if you do stand alone. I think, you're right, really, if with everybody else, then we've got more of a voice and more of a chance, haven't we, really?
Okay, so I think
that's a good point.
that point is well made, that we have a better chance of trading if we are part of a larger group. I think we have Ruth who has a point.
So if I'm understanding that right, we're basically saying that we can create produce and trade and things within the EU, within the UK, and people in the EU buy it because we set tariffs on our own steel as well as China's steel. So if I'm Spain and I want to buy some steel, essentially we're saying that if we're in the EU, that my tariff of how I can buy it is set whether I buy it from China or whether I buy it from the UK. Is that right? Is that what we're saying? Right. I don't
Would somebody like to?
What's the benefit? Is what I'm trying to find out.
The question, I'm not really supposed to butt in here, but I will answer you that the point of the EU is that there are no tariffs between the member states, so there wouldn't be a tariff between the UK and Spain.
So the benefit of me being Spain and buying it from the UK as opposed to China is
you actually don't have any customs tariffs.
right. Okay, so I don't have any customs tariffs, so therefore it's cheaper. It's reasonable price for me to buy it from the UK as well as it is from China.
Just one moment. Would you actually? I have one lady's hand up there, and then I'll bring you in. Susie.
I was just going to say, and that's the whole essence of the European Union, is that there's free trading right through all the members, and there are no tariffs, no regulations. It's a free moving market,
Right.
and the only tariffs are external, so they would be enforced by whichever country you're dealing with. They would actually have a trade agreement to specify what those regulations are going to be. And on that point, I think I mentioned about people who aren't in with Norway, and they actually have to adhere to strenuous regulations and pay tariffs to do business with Europe, and it would impact their economy if they couldn't. So they can pay penalties effectively as a non-member, and that's the unknown for us, that we don't know what the implications are to us, because there isn't a trade agreement in place at the moment. That's something we would have to negotiate.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation.
Isn't it?
It's quite
So,
so.
can I just bring in
Well,
Liz
with
now?
the China incident and the steel, it's just purely that it's flooding the market.
Yes.
And we're too small to compete with that, whereas we can compete if we stay within Europe, because they will assist us to compete.
Yes, I think
that's why I've been reading it.
yes, you've made the point very, very well. I'm now going to bring in Jordan and then Amanda.
Just going back to what Ruth said about what's the benefits of it. UK, because we haven't got the euro, we actually don't fully benefit from this free trade thing anyway, because we have to obviously pay the currency fee and the whatever difference it is in that. So we're not fully committed and we're not fully not committed. So we're kind of in no man's land at the moment in the trade thing anyway, if you're talking about prices. It wouldn't, I don't think if we come out the EU it would make a massive difference. I know for a fact we buy a lot of machines from Germany and places, it's cheaper to buy it there, but we still have to incur the difference in price anyway.
Thank you very much.
And
Answer is
just
next.
counter
And then
argument
this
is particularly detailed, which I'm not 100% sure is accurately represented either, because the way it's been argued doesn't make sense. But my point is different, and that is that by being part of the EU, trade from Britain has been completely restricted with its old trading partners. Within the Commonwealth, within America, with Canada, with New Zealand, with Australia, all of those countries that we had very preferential deals with, we now can no longer have, because we have to conform to EU agreements. And as you probably read in the press, the EU is still taking 7 years at least to come to any kind of agreement with Canada. It hasn't made any agreements with New Zealand and will not trade with them. So we can't trade with people who are actually growth economies. EU is a declining economy and stuck in its sort of moribund state. It might be together one of the largest economies in the world, but it's not really together. It is a bunch of 28 nations that do their own bit under the EU guise. Nobody says, oh, I'm exporting to the EU. They say I'm exporting to Poland or France or Germany, whereas they will say I'm exporting to America. They won't say I'm exporting to Ohio or Florida or California. So I think the argument about the economy is being biased too much towards the benefits when actually the disadvantages are probably greater.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Point well made. I know Liz wants to come back in and then come back in. Would anyone like to respond to either Amanda or Jordan? We have a gentleman at the back there in the green jumper.
Colin Rayner. We've heard lots of arguments, and most people have very valid arguments, but the point is that the EU sell us £60 billion worth of goods more than we sell them. So we left the EU. They're not going to say, we're not going to sell you our BMWs or champagne because we're not going to take your beef, or we're going to take our products. So that argument is false and unfair. And we have an opportunity in our life to regain control of our borders. We have an opportunity now to take control of what happens in this country. We got people we don't know telling us what we can do in our country. People in Poland that we haven't elected. We can elect the people that will manage us for the rest of our lives. We have one opportunity to leave. If we stay in, we'll have more of the same problems. Europe worked 20 years ago. It no longer works. It's time for us to leave.
Thank you for your input. I think you've raised Julie.
Yeah, I think you've placed a very good point there. Yeah, I think that's very, very valid. We did join, didn't we? A number of years ago, and it's out of date now, really. I think that's it's just out of date completely.
Okay, I have a couple of more, 3 more people here: Liz, Ruth, and then Jackie. The hands went up in that order.
I understood actually that we export to Europe 40%, and we import about 10%. I know those figures aren't quite right. In other words, we export to Europe far more than we take from the rest of Europe.
It's not what I've read anywhere.
You see, that's what I've read. So, maybe these figures are not coming out in
That's
such
which they
exactly.
We used to make a lot, didn't we? We don't make any more. Anything else now.
4 hands going up. Ruth was next, and then Jackie, and then Susie.
So I had a question to pose either to yourself, man in the green jumper, or to anyone else that can answer. So I wanted to know, there's obviously a lot of laws and regulations, and a lot of people aren't happy with that, and they're not happy with the fact that we're not making these decisions, we're not making the laws. But if we come out of the EU and there are legal cases that happen, where are we going to get the legislation and the actual laws that have been made to protect people such as their human rights, and when things go to the EU court, what's the next level? And that's the question that I'd like to know, is if we come out of the EU, in terms of legal things, what would then happen?
What happens to the Court of
We
Human
become a
Rights?
sovereign state, we run ourselves.
Okay. If you don't mind, Liz next.
We've talked a lot about the costs of staying in and belonging to the EU, but no one's touched on the potential costs of leaving. I mean, it's rather like the Scottish referendum, is that everyone talks glibly about what will happen when we leave. We really don't know. All we do know is that it will be very, very, very costly. And we won't be in a position to control a lot of the costs. Certainly a lot of the countries like Norway, they have very little control, and as Susie said, it costs them more per head not to be in the EU, and they have less control. But we talk glibly about, we'll have sovereign control, and we'll have all of this control, and we'll be able to do this and that. We really don't know. All we do know is that it will be very expensive, and the EU will not make it easy. Not least because the moment we vote to leave the EU, the French will close the camps at Calais, and we will have to close the Channel Tunnel. What's that cost going to be in terms of trade?
Okay, thank you very much for that point. I'm trying to get around the other people. Susie, if you've got a brief point, then I'd like to bring in some people who haven't actually yet spoken.
It's only a quick one. Listening to chatting and actually doing research to put the speech together tonight, I think what is quite alarming, and I hope it's going to be wrapped up, is that there is so much opinion not based on fact. And the facts that you find are so diverse that it's very difficult to actually pinpoint and find out what really is the true story. And I think that's really quite worrying, because I think a lot of us are making decisions, and not on facts, but just on what someone's opinion is. And if we connect with them, then that becomes the reason why we'll make that decision.
Sure. Thank you. The gentleman in the blue jumper, sorry again, I don't think it's Steve.
It's Steve, yes. I was just going back to the point on does more trade come in or more trade go out, and just to try and clarify that, because although it is true that the EU exports more to us than we export to it, it's a far larger proportion of our exports that go to the EU than the EU's exports come to us. So it's more important to us, even though it's a smaller logical amount. So that's why it's so difficult, and people can play both ways and say it's more important. Our exports are far bigger as a percentage of our exports rather than the physical volume of trade.
Thank you very much for filling us in on that one. I know we have Georgian, your hand's been up, and someone else over here, I think, yes, the gentleman in the green jumper. I would like, if you could, because we focus an awful lot on trade, and I know you want to respond, I would also like it if we could get onto this issue of controlling our borders.
Yes,
Let's talk about migrants. I was just about to say, but Jordan, would you like to do a quick response to...
No, you keep going, that's fine.
I think...
Like the lady in yellow said about if we leave the EU, the border controls at Calais would close the next day. Unfortunately, that is an agreement made between the British government, Margaret Thatcher, and the French government, and they would have to appeal that law in France, and that would take years and years. That is a separate agreement, and lots of the agreements we have with Europe are with individual countries. We've something like 400 different trade agreements which were predated the EU, and the scaremongering we have is that England will survive without the EU. They may not survive without us.
Interesting point. Amanda.
Slightly different point. It's not about migrants. But it is about politics. The thing that worries me most about the EU is the inevitable slide towards total integration of the political union. And that worries me because the quote that I've heard written many a time now on the various resources, where and I'm really bad with names, so I can't remember the name of the person who wrote it, but one of the designers of the original economic union said that what we need to do is year on year slowly gain integration of the political views of all of these countries through economic reasons. So we'll put it to the people that it's economic reasons why we're doing this stuff. But actually what we want is political integration, and we'll do it in such a way that they don't notice. And that seems to me to be what's happening. We will then have no say about what we actually do.
Liz, a quick point, and I'd also like to bring in some other people who haven't said very much so far.
On the political side, which is what you've just brought up there, I cannot see that the whole of the European Union could ever come to an agreement on having anything political that they agree with across the board. And I think the problem we have, which is what Sue said earlier about the MEPs, is that we do not know who we're voting in, and we've been voting people in there, but all they want to do is to get us out. And quite frankly, they haven't been putting our cause forward at all, and I think it's quite a disgrace that that's happened.
Just a good
Here, here.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask someone who hasn't said very much, but who might have an opinion. That's Emilio. Would you like to contribute to this on any of the points that you've
Yes,
raised?
I would like to comment on Amanda's trading opinion that staying in the European Union could be more safe, for example, for food regulations, because getting out of the European Union may pull us more rapidly to transatlantic free trade zone, which United States insists to be done on the rules of the companies, which means very, very little regulations. For example, in the United States, to ban an element or something in the food, you need to prove it is harmful. While in European Union, you need to prove that it is not harmful to use it. And how can an average man prove that something is harmful without this finance and scientists?
So you're concerned about trade agreements with
Yes.
the United States and trade regulation, and that's really a good point. Do we have anyone else who hasn't spoken yet who would like to say something?
Can I say something?
Paola, yeah.
So one of the speakers who was supposed to speak for the Remain speakers, unfortunately ill in Dubai, she said something, she's an Irish lady, and she's got something to say, which I just want to read the sentence from her speech, because
I'm going to have to wrap up actually in a moment, but if it's quick, yeah, quick.
basically, if the UK leaves the EU, it'll put pressure on the border between us and Ireland, and there's already difficulty around that border anyway, and that will heighten the tension around that border. So that was Anne's take on it.
That's an interesting point that perhaps we don't often hear. I am now going to start wrapping up, I think, and what we would like to do is to take another straw poll to see, has any of this debate tonight influenced you, or are we going to get the same numbers? So let's see who based either on what they've heard today or on previous convictions, who will be voting, or who thinks that we should remain in the European Union. Can we have a show of hands, please? So we've got. So how many have we got there?
I don't know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And you, yeah.
So much is that?
14. Yeah, so that's the same as before. And who thinks we should leave? 4, 5. Okay, so the other gentleman's left.
Okay, he would have been.
Yeah,
He would have been.
No, for leaving.
Believing, he would have been for leaving. So that's 6. So in theory, we should have one less undecided. So
One less, yeah. So undecided? We still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 undecided.
Okay.
So in this audience, as a representative sample of the British public, we would get a moderate majority for remaining in the European Union. I think that's a really interesting outcome, and I would just like to thank everybody for your participation in this discussion and for all the points that you've raised. I think it's been a very thoughtful discussion and we have actually focused quite a lot on trade, which did surprise me a little bit. Wasn't where I perhaps expected you to focus, but it was still very interesting. I think a lot of good points came up. So thank you very much, everybody, for all of your contributions. Thanks a lot.